I'm self-isolating on a different continent with crappy internet.
So how many more days do you have left for self-isolation?
So I need to actually look at the paper that I got when I got here. Um, I think it's 10 days total, and that's what I'm planning to do. And that will mean Sunday I can leave self-isolation. But let me just tell you a quick little story because it's pretty crazy and pretty funny. Um,
Okay.
so I'm here with my folks in Croatia. They have a house by the coast in town of Zadar, and so we're here. Basically, I'm here to spend some time with them, and also to as COVID sort of bites across the globe before the vaccine does its thing. There'll probably be lockdowns and stuff like that, and there's a yard here, so that's nice. So anyway,
Yeah.
supposed to have however 10 days or whatever. So I walk around the yard. I have a guest bedroom here that doesn't attach to the house. It's attached to the house, but I don't go into the house. And so I walk in the yard and I'm basically in this room. And then today I'm walking in the yard and I have my phone out and it's dusk and there's it's already pretty dark, but there's a little bit of light still in the sky. And so I'm like, oh man, I really want to take a photo of that. But there's sort of like a fence, facing the street. So I'm like, oh, there's no time to go into the house and ask my parents for keys to get out. I'm just hop the fence. Like when I was a kid, I just like hop the fence and go outside. So I start climbing over the fence. And as soon as I put my feet down, I'm still like holding onto the fence. I turn around and this cop car pulls up and these two guys come out and they're like, Mr. Damir Marusik, is that you? And I was like, yes. They were checking on me. He's like, are you self-isolating? They caught me hopping the fence and
Whoa.
leaving my house. Just total coincidence that
Wow.
I was, but they were doing their checkup. So anyway.
They take it that seriously?
Seriously enough that, they have,
No, that they
on the border, they checked that I was legit. I gave them my address and they followed up on me. Yeah. They're checking like that. It was the first time they've done it. In 9 days, it's the first time they've done it.
No, it was just by chance that they caught you at that moment.
And by chance, they caught me as I'm like jumping over the fence. I mean,
That's
were
cool
laughing.
that they know your full name too, and they address you by your full name.
Oh yeah, it's what you like that. You like that sort of when the state knows everything about you.
It just seems
where
very
you are.
efficient. I'm just surprised because I think from an American standpoint, that's anathema. The idea that the police would be like Mr. Shadi Hamid.
Right.
Like while I'm just like jumping if it's in my neighborhood or whatever.
In my own home. I mean, it wasn't my own neighborhood. It was literally my own home. I was escaping my home where I've been socially isolated for the last 9 days, and literally just across the street to get a better shot of the sky. So I explained that to them, and they were fine with it. It was just like a funny moment because I mean, what are the chances, right? Like they haven't checked on me, and it's just Anyway. So far, so good.
Well, tell us about, do you want to tell us about Croatia and what the vibe is over there? Or do you think our readers don't care about Croatia, or our listeners, I should say?
I mean, I guess they probably don't care. It's, numbers are bad. I haven't gone to the trouble to try and figure out how bad per capita Croatian numbers are. And what that...
I mean, I can do that for you right now.
Go ahead and do that. I mean, I wonder if we're worse off than, say, like North Dakota right now, because North Dakota is peaking in the States.
Yeah.
The news story last night was that, again, and it's the sort of reality of COVID. It depends on the unit of measurement that you're doing. I think probably like North Dakota and all of Croatia is a pretty good thing. But yeah, so the news yesterday, I don't know how much they were trying to sort of scare people and where they, because it all depends on how you slice and dice the numbers, but they said that one northern district somewhere in the country had the highest per capita cases of anywhere in Europe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know what that means.
Well, I'm looking at the New York Times chart right now. Croatia has the 9th highest per capita cases using daily average over the last 7 days in the world. Number 9 in the world.
Hey, that's something.
So it sort of goes like this. It's actually a somewhat surprising list. Luxembourg, Montenegro, Georgia, Andorra, Austria, San Marino, Slovenia, Liechtenstein, naturally. And then Croatia is number 9.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Good company.
Let's see
Where's the
total
U.S.?
cases.
Where's the U.S. at this point?
So in daily average cases, the U.S. is around 19th place.
Yeah.
So certainly better than Croatia.
Certainly. I mean, well, so the other thing that happened, I mean, just to give you a sense of how little control they have. Again, this has interesting echoes to sort of the debates that happen in the United States. Catholic country, the church is actually pretty strong here. No politician has dared, from what I can tell, though some have now sort of started piping up, but no chance of possibly shutting down church service. Absolutely not. So that keeps going on, and that's just a source of transmission. And then 2 days ago, I don't know, being in sort of isolation like this, you sort of lose sense of time. But there was the anniversary of the siege of Vukovar, which was this town in the north of Croatia that was besieged during the Yugoslav wars, and it's very symbolic. It fell and was razed, and lots of murders there. But there was a celebration of the anniversary of that, and they planned for, I don't know what, like under 1,000 people for the official ceremony. 10,000 showed up. So they lost some control there. But worse than that, there were several sort of unplanned and unsanctioned mass celebrations, like commemorations, just like tens of thousands of people packed in, and no one's wearing masks. So you can imagine, like, we're ninth in the world on, per capita or whatever. And then you just have these like massive things, and like just no one's taking care. And it's weird. Like, people are going to cafes. I haven't been to the town, so I haven't seen it, but like the cafes are doing well. People like are out. And yet, it's bad. Like, hospitals are I think, getting really stressed. We'll see.
Well, I'm looking also at per capita deaths, and Croatia is, I think, around number 15. Again, well above the U.S. On that metric. So, I mean, that's like Croatia's small, so sometimes like the per capita numbers can sort of be don't always whatever.
I mean, that's why I think it's more interesting to look at. I don't know what the total population of like North Dakota is, but it's probably close to
North
Croatia.
Dakota would be interesting to compare
to see what that looks like, because that's what it is. I mean, we're just like a small little state in the bigger sort of continent of Europe, and it's probably like a state to state comparison there is better. But in any case, how are you? How's DC?
It's fine. I guess that I was in a cabin in the middle of nowhere last week, and I was trying to get some work done on my book, which I just started. So that was really nice to kind of just get away from it all, while people were freaking out about the election and the coup, attempted coup,
right,
and all that.
But that's still going on.
To kind of, yeah. And it was good to separate myself from all that. I have to say, I feel like a little bit exhausted. We've talked about this. I think I've lost some of my intellectual energy over the past 2 weeks. I just feel exhausted, almost as if I'm burning out finally after like 4 years of this bullshit.
But now working on the book feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good to
It does. So I've done 8,000 words so far.
Not bad.
Yeah. So my writing regimen is 1,000 words a day, 4 out of 7 days a week.
Pretty good. I think I lost you, Shadi. You're back. You said 4 days out of 7.
Yeah, so I'm about where I should be. So if we do 4 out of 7, 1,000 words per day, 2 weeks, that would be around 8,000 words. Mm. So
what's the target?
Maybe 90,000.
Mm. And is it do you get up in the morning to do this? What's your preferred time to write?
Whenever, really doesn't matter. I probably should focus on doing it in the morning, but I'm spreading it out over the course of the day. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely losing productivity as of late. I feel like I started off really strong when I was in the cabin, but since I've been back in DC, I've been a little bit more distracted.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just more panic. Certainly there's been a shift in the atmosphere in terms of how people are talking about COVID, where I think, most people had, quote unquote, moved on and had decided to live their lives. I think now there's a return to this idea of self-isolation, not going out, not seeing many people, staying in your pod, or perhaps even not seeing anyone at all because people are leaving, obviously, for Thanksgiving in a few days or in a week or so. So, people are making decisions accordingly. And I think, some people are deciding that, hey, is it even a good idea to see one's parents or grandparents, and all that? Which I don't think that was really predominant in the discourse until really just a week or two ago. But now you're starting to feel it, that sense of urgency, and that sense that the risk level is significantly higher. And even the testing lines are quite long now. So I went to one of the local DC testing sites, and about a 2-hour wait was my estimate.
Hmm.
Actually, it wasn't my estimate. I mean, Rachel Rizzo went to get her test, and she told me that it took her an hour to get halfway through the line. And then, using my math skills, I then determined that suggested that 2 hours was the total
Well,
total time
so
to
I
wait.
I had to get tested to come here. Just on the border, they asked for a test, and even though my flight got messed up, so my test was actually out of date by the time I got to the border, which is partly why I think they were sending goons to check up on me. But well, not goons, perfectly nice young police officers, nothing goonish about them. Anyway, but I just went to my doctor. I scheduled an appointment, so there was no wait apart from just like regular doctor wait. But I was actually, it's funny because I was texting with Rachel while she was on the line, and she was like, "Oh, you had the test. How horrible is it? Is it bad?" And I was like, "No, it's like, yeah, I mean, they go up your nose, it's a little weird, it's uncomfortable. It's not as bad as like the really deep test. I don't know if you've ever had that. If you have like a really bad nasal infection, sometimes it's just like they go
No.
into your brain. It's horrible. It's much less bad than that. And so I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's nothing. You won't even notice it. And then, I forget. I felt like at least like an hour or so passed. And I was like, yeah, so I told you it was nothing, right? And she's like, no, I'm still in line. So yeah, but it's interesting, right? Is that like, it's DC just hasn't been hit very hard the whole time. We just haven't been. And, I mean, part of the psychological aspect of it is most of the people I knew that had it just weren't in DC. I knew people that I don't know very well, or people I had never met but were friends of friends had gotten it in DC, but no one really in our like group had actually gotten it. Like maybe, yeah, like one or two people that were maybe slightly more distant group had gotten it, but it didn't feel like it was really real. But it seems like maybe that's shifted a little bit now. Is that like the panic? More people are
Yeah,
knowing
because I mean,
someone?
obviously, well, yeah, we know one person
Yeah.
now.
But I mean, do you think like that's more generally what's driving this sort of new thing, or is it just a sort of the aggregate numbers in the news? Like, what's driving this new awareness of this
Well,
situation?
it sort of goes back to my infamous September Wisdom of Crowds post on the distortion of a virus, where I was making the point that uh, we're seeing all this alarmism from the rest of the country, which it's accurate because cases are at an unprecedented level, but we're maybe looking at states like North Dakota and many other states that have very high numbers, and we're extrapolating that to mean that, oh, it must be worse where we are, or we have to be in line with the national alarmism, even if it doesn't reflect what our local DC numbers are. That said, there is an increase in DC. I mean, we're not that badly hit at this point. So let's see, November 16th. We have gone up to about between 100 and 200 average daily new cases, which is higher than at any point since late May. So we're sort of back in the May danger zone. And that means that it's worse today than at any point in the last 5 months or so. So in that sense, I mean, it is getting worse in DC, but the numbers are still relatively low. So we're talking about the daily case number going from maybe around 50 to 75 to 100 to 200. So still relatively low.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then but the question is, like, how do you deal, like, so, we look at these numbers and they're out of context because, it's an 100% increase, give or take. but 100% increase from very low numbers, it's hard to know how to assess that level of risk.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. It's just I don't know. I guess I feel like we've been dancing around it for 20 minutes in a desire not to get sucked back into it. But it's like it's kind of like the how do you assess the risk of what's actually happening to the republic right now? The
Oh yeah,
argument,
that.
yeah, that thing. It's like, is it this obvious clown show obviously will have repercussions. Um, how do we measure those things? And what's the dynamic? I don't know. I've been getting in swatting back uh, accusations of being far too cavalier from that last essay and other things that clearly one side is a lot worse here, and then like everything else needs to be excused. But I still keep coming up with this sort of stuff where people are talking about like, oh, obviously I don't mean re-education camps, but you know, uh, something needs to be done about half of this country, and it's I don't know. Again, like it's fair to say that we needn't necessarily overly dwell on that, but I can't help but feel that it's important to note how the whole thing is like going down the toilet, not and without unduly therefore both sidesing the thing. You know what I mean? It's to notice that what Trump is doing is also just completely twisting normal people in pretzels, and
Yeah.
the the uh, the end result will be not just a Republican Party that believes an election was stolen and feels justified in whatever the hell they get up to in the next 2.5 years until midterms or whatever, but uh, also a Democratic Party that feels that like half the country is like inhuman somehow, or like zombies, or
Yeah.
a cult. So I don't know. How does
Well,
one
look, I
measure?
mean,
How does one measure what's happening?
so I'm not sure I have a lot to say, or although I do have an idea for a rant that I can just test out with the crowd.
Yeah, go
And I
ahead.
actually tried to go. I went on the Wisdom of Crowds, our what's it called? Our writing platform. When we post things, we use Ghost.
Yeah.
After we moved from Substack, and I don't know if you noticed, Damir, but I actually have a new post that I'm working on
Oh, I
because
didn't.
I felt
Yeah.
like a.
Good.
But I'm having trouble with it, and it's not coming out naturally. So maybe I'll give it another shot tomorrow and see if I can actually get it out.
You want to
But
test out some
before I
verbal?
get into yeah, but before I get into that, here's what I've been reduced to on Twitter. I'm just tweeting cryptic sentences. That's what I've been doing the last couple days.
Shadi, you've cut out again. Wait, Shadi, the last thing you said before it cut out, sorry, bad internet, was I've been reduced to tweeting cryptic sentences, and then you cut out. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can share those. I mean, it might be of interest to our listeners.
Sure. I
I
mean,
can.
do you want to share after you share? You're going to tell us why you're tweeting cryptic sentences, or
Yeah,
you're just
yeah, sure. I'll add some context, but
go on.
here, just so okay. So last night, here is what I tweeted, and in quotation marks, but I didn't say who the quote is from. So I'm leaving a lot up to the reader to make their own decisions about whether or not they want to find out where this is from.
Yeah.
Okay, quote unquote. The worst have lost their fear, and the best have lost their hope.
Powerful.
Okay, next. Little do they know that they meet under an empty sky from which the gods have departed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, no author, no attribution.
With quotation marks, or are you
With quotation marks.
Okay.
No, I'm not. No, quotation marks.
Okay.
But without any kind of context.
Yeah. I was going to say there's a Twitter account called Russia No Context, which is just like really weird shit that happens in Russia, and they just like put it up.
Oh,
and,
that could be cool.
yeah. So this is like Shoddy No
I would
Context.
like that.
Go on.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Reason can enlighten us as to our ethical conflicts. Often it shows them to be deeper than we thought and leaves us in the lurch as to how to resolve them. No context. Next. The history of things that didn't happen has never been written.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Those are the four cryptic tweets that I offered up to the world over the past 24 hours. Do you know who those quotes are from by any chance?
I don't. A Twitter quartet, though.
Yes.
Go on.
So the first is from Hannah Arendt.
Okay.
The second is from Hans Morgenthau.
Okay.
The third is from the philosopher John Gray.
Yes.
And the fourth is from Neil Ferguson.
Good. And why are you doing this?
And even someone commented on Twitter, they're like, Shadi, when did you start tweeting these cryptic things in this confusing manner?
Yeah.
And I was like, yesterday?
Yeah. And
I mean, that's the answer.
That is the answer. But I mean, so are you getting good engagement? Lots of retweets of cryptic?
People are into it.
Really?
And people are reading into it. Like someone was like, it was actually kind of funny what he said. Okay, here we go. He saw it as a warning. He saw my Hannah Arendt tweet, and this is what he said. He says, when Shadi Hamid serves up Hannah Arendt in a dark mood, then you best pay attention.
Yeah.
So he's like getting worried. He's like, shit, Shadi is offering up Hannah Arendt tweets late on a Thursday night. This can only mean bad things.
Yeah, yeah. And why are you doing this? Are you just rendered speechless by what's happening? So you're just reaching for quotes?
No, so honestly, part of it, I don't really have anything to say in particular about what's going on this week. But what I can offer is a sort of mood signifier that people at least know, like, okay, here are the quotes that are resonating with me. And then the only substantive thing I tweeted today, it was just this. This was cryptic, but it's from me. It's not a quote from someone else. This is all I said.
Autocryptic.
Autocryptic. I said, I suppose it was inevitable.
That's it. Yeah, back.
Oh, you went away for a while.
I did. I had to restart the whole thing. All right. So the last thing I heard was, I suppose it was inevitable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the last thing I heard is, I suppose it was inevitable, then silence.
Really? That's honestly the last thing you heard?
That is.
That's very dark and depressing.
Yeah, it is. All of this is dark and depressing.
Well, that's what I...
Hold on. I lost you again for a good chunk. So many problems.
Wait, what?
So many problems, I said.
Is that the end of a sentence or a continuation of something that you were saying because you disappeared?
I disappeared for a long time. I just had to restart the whole thing again. This is the world we live in. Oh, man. Basically, the Republic's falling apart.
Worst episode ever.
The Republic's falling apart. COVID is eating the world ahead of the thing, and communications becoming impossible. Horrible.
What is the point of all this?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Okay, but did you catch like what the reason is for me saying I suppose it was inevitable?
No, it kept cutting off, and it might cut off again because maybe I'm destined to never know. Every time okay, you're about to explain.
Yeah, so a couple smart people did figure out what I was referring to, but it's hard because it could be referring to a number of things. However, I did say I suppose it was inevitable a couple weeks ago. So if people were paying attention, they'll realize that I've said it twice in similar circumstances. So 2 weeks ago, I said it for the first time without any additional context. And that was when?
2 weeks ago was what? Did the elections happen then? When?
Something after the election.
What happened after the election?
Or maybe right before, but it was when Matt Iglesias announced that he was leaving Vox.
Oh, I see. So it was right after Ezra left.
So whenever a senior Vox staffer leaves Vox, I think that my thing is that I tweet, I suppose it was inevitable.
Interesting. Is it inevitable that this media fragmentation is happening?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable that, Matt Iglesias kind of had to leave. It was only a matter of time.
But it seems like, at least I wasn't paying very close attention today, but like Ezra's just moving on to the New York Times. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, apparently so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't inevitable. Yeah. Perhaps it's inevitable that like the New York Times will become our sole organ of right think. That's possible.
No, but I think there's also a sense that like there's only so much you can do with Vox, and Ezra found himself in a difficult situation. Anyway, we don't have to go into all that. But maybe more interestingly, I can just do my rant.
Yeah, please. I mean, that's what we came here for. Your rant that you're going to try out here and then maybe write up later. Is that the idea?
Okay, yeah, let me get my notes and make sure I'm saying it the right way. There's a lot of pressure on me.
I thought that your scribbles aren't yet coming together. Why don't you just try and ad lib it? Maybe it'll improve your scribbles. What's a rant if it's
Okay.
not ad libbed? Come on now.
Okay, fine. If you insist,
Yes, come on.
Damir.
I do.
Fine. Okay, let me get my bearings. Let me get angry right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So my position basically has been that Democrats should be magnanimous in victory.
Yeah.
That that someone has to stop this symmetric polarization or this endless mirroring of each other's worst instincts. At some point, someone has to decide to stop doing that. Otherwise, we'll quite literally be doing it forever or for many years to come. And that means that one side has to take some responsibility here. And we only have two major parties. So it's one or the other. And unfortunately, as we found out, the Republican Party seems to be beyond repair. And for the first time, I'm wondering if I should shift my position. And can I really sustain this notion that Democrats should take the quote unquote high ground and depolarize unilaterally? Is it really fair to ask one party, my party, to depolarize unilaterally and be magnanimous? And so for the first time, I think, as our listeners will know, and as you will know, Damir, for several months now, I've been trying to resist the urge to further polarize things, and I've argued that we should assume good faith on the part of at least some Trump supporters, and that the GOP is not beyond repair, that the GOP is not evil, the GOP is not uniquely bad, and that the other 70 million Americans who voted for Donald Trump have to be brought into the system. They have to feel like they have a place in this new America that we're apparently trying to build. And for the first time, I'm doubting that position, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm wrong.
But what's the alternative? I mean, I'm glad that you're getting there because then I can have a reasoned discussion with you because I don't think there's anyone else out there in Twitter land that I can have this discussion with. But what does it mean to you know uh, whatever engage in this combat specifically?
Well, I think the bigger thing is I'm feeling more partisan. I'm feeling a little bit more conventional. And even a couple people have noticed it on Twitter where they joked, or maybe they weren't joking, where they said, oh, look, Shadi is deciding to become more conventional again. After all this contrarian stuff during the Trump era, he's already shifting leftward and he's going to like be a little bit more boring and all that. And maybe that's kind of what I want, because I want to be more boring so I can focus on my book. However, out of obligation and duty to the listeners of Wisdom of Crowds and to our dear members, I feel like I have to stay strong and I have to stay at least somewhat contrarian, because otherwise, what would be the point of this whole endeavor? Can you imagine me becoming kind of normie in my ideas and saying like normal, boring things? God forbid.
Well, I mean, look, so like a long time ago, I bought a domain. I still think I have it because I think I've sort of dutifully repurchased it over the years. It doesn't cost much, but like, and I had a blog that I ran like way back when. It was called New Contrarian. That was it. I had like newcontrarian.com. I have it. I don't like the content's gone. I've deleted it. I don't think I've even saved it anywhere else. It's maybe in the Wayback Machine somewhere. People want to dig it out, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think that wisdom of crowds is the new contrarian in any case. Why are you saying that? I mean, the whole point is, at least from where I'm sitting, is that we sort of like work through this. So I don't know. Walk me through it. What is this? What is this?
I mean, I'm kind of joking. I mean, of course, look, my goal is not to be contrarian. My goal is to be right and to be true to my own beliefs. And if that means that I'm going to adopt somewhat more conventional positions on a particular issue, so be it. I mean, you know that I've never liked the label contrarian.
Right.
And it actually bothers me when anyone attacks me in those terms, or even if it's friendly, like sometimes friends, sometimes even you have referred to me privately as a contrarian. And I'm like, Damir, I mean, that's not how I see myself,
Right.
because contrarian suggests some kind of knee jerk response to whatever the conventional wisdom is. And I don't really see myself as doing precisely that. It happens to be the case that I take on contrarian positions, but I would like to think that it's not merely a reaction, because I don't want to be a reactionary. I don't want to define myself in opposition to the crowd. And this has been a long time tension and struggle. And we've talked about it quite explicitly. To what extent do we come to be defined by what we oppose? I don't want to fall into that trap. And maybe sometimes I've gone too far in that direction.
But again, then walk me through then the rationale here for, um, well, it's fine. Okay, you want to rejoin the team. I was making fun of you on Twitter on this. It's like, yeah, Trump's over. Shadi's going back to, the
Yeah.
comfortable, the warm confines of his mother party, the bosom of the left, or whatever the hell you want to. But like, I still, I mean, walk me through this, because this is one of those things that I don't have a good answer to. Is And it's part of that reason why, like, I sort of watching this as sort of like a horrific car crash, like, happening in slow motion. And again, sure, Trump's at the wheel, he's driving, but like, I feel like everyone else is also grasping at the wheel and just like twisting it and making the car like careen even worse, is what it feels like to me. I don't know. Damon Linker, I think, wrote a really good column, just sort of building on stuff that like Aaron and I have also written, and I think, again, pointing how we're all in this together and sort of driving off a cliff. So again, now tell me again, what is this, apart from just like a feeling of self-satisfaction? What do you mean about
Oh, I
being more
don't feel
partisan about?
self-satisfied. I
Okay, well
don't feel
then,
self-satisfied
well,
at all, actually.
what about comfortable? I mean, you're saying you're coming back to some sort of the comfort in a boring opinion or something like that.
Because I want to be bored, but more specifically on this point, here's what I'll say, and this is where I think I would like to think that my principles are somewhat coherent and perhaps even consistent. I only have one non-negotiable in politics, but maybe I have more than one, like not killing people, but putting aside the obvious ones, I only have one potentially controversial non-negotiable,
Yeah,
and that is the sanctity of democratic outcomes.
right.
And now Republicans are violating that sanctity, and certainly Donald Trump is violating my only non negotiable, and I can't forgive that.
Yep.
So that requires me to shift my position and to be angry, and perhaps even very angry at the Republican Party. I can't let them, I can't talk about this as if it's business as usual, because this is what our democracy is founded on, and they are undermining it day in and day out. And I'm angry about that.
Yeah.
And the last 4 years, I've been taking Democrats to task and for what I consider to be an active effort to delegitimize our legitimately elected president, however terrible he was. And that was something I couldn't forgive when Democrats were doing it. And I don't know if there was anything that I was more consistent and dogged on than that, because I think it's really, really important. And in some ways, Democrats contributed to this new standard. And I think that you see some Republicans now saying, oh, well, Trump is returning the favor, or Republicans are just doing what Democrats did after Trump was elected in 2016, trying to undo the result, bringing up the Electoral College, using Russiagate to delegitimize the presidency and to cast a shadow on the entire 4 years of Donald Trump's tenure, so on and so forth. So, but it's kind of like weird. So, wait, are you suggesting that two wrongs make a right? So, the thing that you were so angry about that Democrats were doing in 2017 and 2018 until almost like 2020, you think that now it's okay to do that now that you're in the position to, I mean, it just doesn't make it.
Back again.
Yeah, Demir, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. So the
Maybe
last
this
thing,
wasn't meant to be.
yeah, I know. The last thing I heard, though, and maybe we can wrap this up on this because we're coming up, and these technical difficulties are just a horrific pain in the butt. But I do think there's some good stuff here. The last thing I heard was basically, your argument that what's it called? That the Republicans are arguing in deeply bad faith, like two wrongs don't make a right on this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's completely preposterous. I absolutely agree. I guess, and maybe where what I'm wrong to be sort of fixating on this is still the long game rather than the immediate game on this. Um, and perhaps that's just like the constant weakness of how I approach these things is thinking about where does this all lead? Um, and maybe we just need to be thinking about the current moment. I guess the reason I'm torn about thinking about the current moment is that I am still convinced that there's no way it's going to succeed. And therefore, it behooves us to think beyond it still. Um, does that bias me in some way to then, like, again, implicitly somehow give Republicans a pass on this? I don't think so. Because I don't think I'm going to be giving a pass to if somehow the Republicans manage to pull out a Senate win on this and then become obstructionist and are leveraging, um, delegitimizing narratives throughout the whole thing, claiming that their obstruction is justified because Biden's not a real president. I don't think I'll be providing cover for that kind of bullshit because I think that's really toxic. I mean, at least as toxic as what Trump is doing in his clown ass sort of way. But still, I can't help but think that the intellectually interesting and serious thing is thinking beyond this moment because I guess I'm still convinced that this isn't going to amount to anything. I don't know exactly what the end game for this is, and maybe it's uglier than I'm envisioning. Maybe Mitch McConnell is getting himself into a corner that he's not going to be able to back down from, and God, I don't know. Maybe we're heading to like an actual real crisis on some level. But I guess my feeling is that we're not heading to that kind of crisis. It's going to somehow um, back itself out because every challenge is going to get smacked down, and all these sorts of bizarre attempts to get legislatures to overturn the results are just not going to work. And then we're going to be in some sort of new reality that we're going to have to navigate on this. So I don't know. Maybe it's right what you're saying is that we need to get back to sort of just being angry on like daily partisan level rather than thinking past this and thinking about like the broader health of the system. And it's time to just sort of get down to brass tacks and the immediate political moment and what it demands of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In my weaker moments, I think to myself, maybe we have to pummel the Republican Party into submission.
And what does that mean, though?
Like
That's
after,
my question to you. What does that mean? And what do you, and how does one do that? Does one do that by, again, question to you, by well, again, in a democratic way? What does that mean? It's still the lesson holds, and the lesson that I'm still kind of pleased with, even though it's playing out in a horrific sort of way, which is that the country, for better or worse, didn't repudiate the last 4 years, even though Biden won. It's very much has not been a verdict that democracy, whatever it is, has spoken, if that's a metaphor that makes any sense, and has repudiated what has happened. So what do we do with that? What does it mean to pummel?
um, hmm. Well, I think that a liberal use of executive orders to push through democratic priorities, um, and I suppose stuff that I'm not even comfortable really bringing up because it goes against so much of what I believe, and it shows that in my weaker moments I'm tempted by what so many are tempted by, this idea of shutting people out of government, of ensuring that Trump appointees pay a price and holding them accountable in a way. Like, I mean, obviously I'm not talking here about like lustration in the sense of getting rid of the old regime and that kind of truth and accountability and reconciliation commission type stuff. But this idea of exacting a price on people who were complicit in the violation of the sanctity of democratic outcomes. Now, and we can debate what that would actually mean, but it shows that if I am pushed to be more open to these admittedly polarizing ideas, I can only imagine what run-of-the-mill Democratic partisans must be thinking now. And they are thinking these things because we see them saying it on Twitter, these ideas of deprogramming 75 million Americans. So that's the extreme version of it. And it's so contrary to everything that I stand for, to think of my fellow Americans in that way. So for me to even be tiptoeing around some of these ideas, it shows that we've gotten to a dark place, and I feel like I'm weaker. I mean, it doesn't reflect well on me that I am entertaining this approach to politics that is more aggressive, more exclusionary, more uncompromising, the use of raw power to advance democratic ends. I mean, I toyed with that idea in one of my previous first draft essays for Wisdom of Crowds. No apologies for raw power, or whatever that was called.
Yeah.
But I'm moving more in that direction, perhaps.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's just worth pointing out that logic just means that the country's over in a lot of ways.
Does it?
Doesn't it? Because I think the very idea of deprogramming, it doesn't work. It makes no sense. I think it's incoherent.
And it's bad. It's immoral. It's terrible. All that. But so putting that aside for a second, because that's like the extreme version of this, the more moderate version of this is to try to promote the development of a new Republican Party. I don't know how you do that. And I guess Republicans have to be part of that process too. But I guess the question is this current version of the Republican Party, is it salvageable? Or if you have a party that refuses to concede after an election defeat, it means they don't buy into the rules of the game. They don't accept the democratic process. I mean, that's one reading, right?
Sure.
Can we live with a party that doesn't believe in small d democracy?
Can we live means the country's over. The question answers itself.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to. And this is why I guess I keep sort of fixating on this, is that I think that asking that sort of question, it's fine to be honest and say that that's what's on your mind and that's the questions you're asking. But I think it's also important to recognize, what exactly we're saying. Look, I mean, it's almost up time, and you and I actually have another call that we have to get on right now with actually our friend Osita Nwanevu. But I don't know if you read his review of
I didn't.
Obama's
Is it
book.
good?
It's good. I mean, Osita's, I think, one of the smartest young writers on the left for sure, like by a long shot.
Yeah.
And he actually, writes in this essay, talks about the fact that, as someone who came up with the sort of inspired by Obama, like his sort of political, his sort of first political moment and understanding of politics was Obama. And then basically 8 years of Obama, and then being faced with his rhetoric again, sees just like how hollow and nothing it is. And Osita's, properly a lefty, having written an essay about how the Constitution should be abolished and whatever. But it's interesting, he's toying with it here. He says we're not. Well, I don't have the essay in front of me, and I read it whenever it was. But he says, in many ways, we're not on the one hand on the verge of a civil war, but he says on the other hand, there's a kind of polarization, a kind of logic that we're not as far from it as it might seem. And it's like, it's fine to say that, what do we do with this party that doesn't respect democratic norms and the rest of this? But at the same time, it is important to recognize that any solution to that, well, I don't know. I think it just points to the whole thing's broken. Like if half the country, or even like, a third of the country is that rejectionists, you've got a problem. You've got more than a problem. You've got a problem that's beyond solution, it seems like to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more to say, and maybe we can actually dive into what the implications are if you have half of the country or a quarter of a country being outright rejectionists. I think it's worth playing out because there's a debate to be had. Like, how much does that actually matter in practice? I mean, it's one thing for someone on the street to say, I voted for Trump and I think the election was fraudulent, but then they go about their daily life and they kind of live with a Biden administration. They're not that angry. They have some weird conspiracy theories, but life goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, or that if you have all these people who believe in these conspiracy theories about fraud, that actually means something in practice, that it really undermines our politics in a tangible way. And I think I'm on the fence on that, and I can be open to both responses. And maybe this will help me actually write the piece out, and maybe we can talk about it when it's more fully formed, because I think you've made me think here, because, you know, if what I just offered up there in my own tentative way does lead up to a dead end.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that we've always believed in here on the podcast is that arguments that lead to dead ends, even if they are in some sense correct, are not great arguments.
Agree.
So even if I'm right on the merits that this is what should be done to the Republican Party, it doesn't mean that, like, should in an ideal world. We don't live in an ideal world, and we have to think about a way out.
Yeah. All right, Shadi, I guess this is as good a place as any to stop this glitchy podcast we just did here, but I'll try and...
Should we hype up a bonus episode, or we shouldn't do that because of the tech issues?
Well, look at...
after we have our call with Osita and stuff.
Well, we're going to have our call with Osita. Let's see. I think we'll definitely record a bonus episode. I'm just not sure that, given the tech issues, we should do it tonight. I'm going to be in the non-quarantine part of the house and closer to the internet, starting on Sunday. So, upon your availability, we can record something.
Well, I just want to have a chance to hype up. So if we are recording a bonus episode, it gives me an opportunity to play my marketing role and to say to our dear listeners that if you do want to hear the bonus episode whenever we get a chance to record it, there's really one way to do that. And that means that you go to wisdomofcrowds.live/subscribe and you become a member by paying $5 a month or $50 a year. And I think it's time to become a member. I think you guys should become members.
I think so too. All right, Shadi.
Okay.
Really good catching up across the Atlantic, glitchy as it was.
Yes.
Talk to you in 3 minutes.
Yes, indeed. Okay,
right,
later.
bye-bye.
Bye.